Hello, folks. This is another, my thoughts video. And I want to discuss something that has been sort of bugging me lately when it comes to representation in media. Um, because I always found these arguments to be absurd and absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion, when we talk about casting. Now, today, unfortunately, for some reason, people still have a hard on hate for Captain Marvel for some reason, which I don't understand where this sort of extreme, like, it's really bizarre. Because the comics kind of went forward with how she looks now to what Brie Larson's Captain Marvel is doing. So I don't know why people are acting like she's like the devil, but that's a whole nother conversation. I want to talk about representation in terms of superheroes because what gets on my nerves is that we do have it's getting better. I would agree it is getting better, but there's some areas where we need a little bit more improvement on, and that is when it comes to casting characters who are predominantly white characters and casting them. Now, when it comes to this is where the bullshit becomes the bullshit here, because if the character is white but they're somehow, let's say they're from a humanoid race. Like, a great example is, I have to bring up DC Comics, is Adam Strange. Adam Strange, he doesn't necessarily need to be a white guy. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern that we all know, and John Stewart. Hal Jordan, in all honesty, I've always thought to myself, does he really need to be a white guy? Not really. John Stewart, everyone loves John Stewart, of course. That's the Green Lantern most people grew up with, that they know. When you hear Green Lantern, the first Green Lantern that comes to your mind is him. It's John Stewart. Um, Nobody knew about Hal Jordan at all. And even if they knew about Hal Jordan, they all knew that that was the white guy who was a Green Lantern, right? So for me, it's like Hal Jordan really doesn't need to be white, in my opinion, per se. But that's besides the point. Now, when it comes to casting characters that, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter what ethnicity these characters are in terms of casting, because it's kind of like not that important to what the core of the character is supposed to represent. Black Panther, of course, yes, because it says it right there, and whatever. It's the same thing with like people complaining about Heimdall from the Thor movies. They're like, "How is Heimdall? What? Like he's not supposed to be black?" And I'm looking at these people like, Marvel loosely bases their Norse mythology stuff off, right? So if you're looking for Marvel to do accurate Norse mythology, I think y'all are reaching, and y'all just saying that because he's black. Let's be honest here. Um, because y'all, okay, first off, Loki's not Thor's brother in actual mythology. Like Loki's more like he's more like an evil uncle, if anything. He's like an evil step uncle. I mean, that's kind of what Loki is in actual Norse mythology. Um, Odin isn't some I'm a wise man. Odin is he's a complicated character in Norse mythology. I mean, he's a bit of a huckster. I mean, the show that really captures Odin, how he really acted like in Norse mythology, is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Odin acts very much similar to that. Like he's kind of a huckster, and you hear stories of Odin in mythology, and it's like, this isn't the Odin from Marvel's. Odin is very different. um, Odin in Marvel's more like he has like the whole wise king trope, especially though in the comics they have tried to, you know, be more open and sort of like bring up more so his Norse mythological counterpart a little bit in terms of his personality. But he's still kind of like the wise king guy. You know what I mean? He's not the huckster. He's not the guy who is kind of, you can't really trust him. Like that's not the Odin that we sort of that is actually in Norse mythology. So when people complain about Heimdall, that was all racism. Let's just be frank. They didn't like Idris Elba being a black dude playing Heimdall, And I like how now in the comics they've given Heimdall more black features. So even though it's annoying, it's like, guys, just say that the dude's black, all right? Like, so ex- just accept, yeah, he's a black dude and nobody cares, you know. And these are like Asgardian people, like no one gives a shit, okay? So when people complain about that and they not complain about other things, you know that they're full of shit. Um, One of the reasons why I brought this up is because there was a movie series that was going to happen that was unfortunately canceled by DC called New Gods. They were going to adapt Jack Kirby's Fourth World. Um, Anna Navarro was the director. And I remember when this news came out, there was a whole bunch of people that some people had legitimate criticism because she did Record of Time and all that, which was fine. But there was another a swath of online people that were saying that this is going to be a SJW movie, not knowing anything about it. And I think I know why, because it's Anna Devore. So she's a black woman who's going to do Jack Kirby's Fourth World, right? So, and then you have Tom King, which is this. I mean, this movie would have been really something because you have Tom King who's writing, and he wrote one of the best stories of Mr. Miracle, so he knows the New Gods very well. Um, he understands those characters very, very well. So, you know, it's possible, DC canceled because of the stupid Snyder Cut nonsense and how, Zack Snyder had, Darkseid in it, in which, I'm not going to get into that. But the whole idea that certain characters need to be this sort of ethnicity is, let me tell you something. When, if someone's going to argue with me, especially with the New Gods, that Highfather, Scott Free, Light Ray, I'm missing a couple people here. Big Barda, um, there's more characters I know. I just forget, I'm blanking on the names. Hemon, yeah, that's him. Um, the Furies, the list goes on. If y'all tell me that these New God characters that are in New Genesis and Apocalypse, if y'all gonna tell me that they all gotta be white people, I'm gonna call bullshit on that. The reason why I say that is because this isn't based off of mythology, folks. This is literally the ideas of what Jack Kirby wrote, has an original concept, taking ideas from other mythologies, but it's its own thing, right? These are like space interdimensional alien beings, right? So the fact that y'all gonna argue with me and tell me that Orion has to be a white dude, I'm gonna call bullshit on. Sorry, because it's like, nah, he's an interdimensional god being. I don't think he has to look like a white man. Sorry, that I don't buy that. I don't buy that argument because it's like, nah. So people were I know why people were going after Anna Devore. They were saying these remarks because they were basically implying that she was going to cast more people of color to play the characters in New Genesis and Apocalypse, which would have been freaking fantastic. I wouldn't have not mind at all if they made like New Genesis look like a much more futuristic, like paradise version of like Afrofuturism or something. I wouldn't have mind if they went that way with New Genesis. And then with Apocalypse, they keep it the way Apocalypse has always been, which is like, a hell world. I mean, it's not hard to do Apocalypse. I mean, it's really not hard to do. Visually, yeah, visually, Apocalypse is not hard to do, actually. You just have to have like those vents. It has to be like Apocalypse basically has to look like a Coruscant on fire. It has to look like Moraband from Star Wars. Fuck, I'm using the wrong planet. Um, the fire planet that they fight in Star Wars. I forgot the name of the planet. But it has to basically look like that, but it has to look like a city planet because Apocalypse is a city world. It's basically like a Unicopolis. It's a city planet with this heavily industrial, like you have these fire pits and stuff, and it looks like a hell world. And you got these parademons, and it is a society. So people do live there, just under this supreme dictatorship of this guy, Darkseid, this god being. So that there's a difference. But in all honesty, I saw this argument and I was just like, wait, so y'all gonna argue with me that y'all can't make a multiracial looking New Genesis? Like they all have to be white people? Like Light Ray can't be, I don't know, Asian? Light Ray can't be Hispanic? Or Latino? Latina? He can't, or better yet, gender swapping. Light Ray can't be a woman? I don't see a problem with that. Doesn't bother me because no one knows these characters that much. So it wouldn't actually be a problem if they changed things up with the original story of the New Gods. Just keep the same story beats, but just have different characters and different. They don't. This is the thing. This is another issue with sci-fi that is notorious with sci-fi, is when they have humanoid species that are very similar to humans. There is this annoying default where they just make them white people, and it's just kind of like, I know that alien race is supposed to be a white person, right? Because you make them look like white people. It's the same thing that I had with like Kryptonians, with the whole like, of course they're black Kryptonians. Y'all motherfuckers think they're all white people? Give me a break. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's the same thing. It's like people saw Asgardians in the Thor movie, and in the Thor movie, I keep telling people this with the MCU. Thor in the MCU is much more alien portrayed than his comic book counterpart, which is, the comic book version of Thor has more of a supernatural element to it, while the MCU Thor is more cosmic, if that makes more sense. So it's different. The Thor in the comics is like he's almost like a mix of cosmic and supernatural. The MCU Thor is very cosmic. So this idea of these Asgardians being like another beings of like advanced people, them having black people isn't really like a surprise, bruh. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is the nonsense I'm talking about, and people are literally arguing with me over it. They're just like, oh, what they're gonna cast Big Barda, she's gonna be black, and I'm like, yeah, good. I don't care if they make Barda black. To be honest, and this is just me, when I first read Jack Kirby's Fourth World, the original comics, and all that stuff, I read all that stuff. I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I can see Big Barda being a black woman. I can see Scott Free being a black man. I can see Orion. I've always imagined, especially those three, Orion, Scott Free, and Big Barda. I've always imagined them as black people in my head. That always come to my mind because I don't know, it just came up to my mind. It just made sense. And the same thing for Highfather, um, you know. I'll be honest. When I read the New God comics, like when I reread them, I always used Morgan Freeman's voice in my head, and imagine Morgan Freeman has Highfather almost all the time. When I read the New God comics, I always imagine Morgan Freeman as like Highfather. So it never bothered me. I was just like, you know what? I don't care if and people are making these disparaging comments about it, saying that, well, movie's canceled now, so tragedy. But people, when they first heard the news, everyone was making a big deal about it, being like, oh well, if she's directing, people are making a deal about it, and I'm like, so what if she's directing the film? You know what I mean? Like, who cares if she's directing the movie? If that's what if she wants to put more people of color in the New Gods, that makes sense because they're from another planet. And if you're going to have humanoids from another planet, I'm sorry, you got to make them ethnically diverse within the planet, all right? If you're just going to have all white people, I'm thinking you're selling me some eugenics bullshit. I'm sorry. I think that's what you're trying to sell me here. So for me, it's like, I mean, what the hell? I mean, these characters don't need to be white people. Like Orion, he don't need to be white. I think, personally, I think Orion would be better if he was a black man. In my opinion, that's just, of course, my opinion. That would make more sense, at least for me, for Orion and even Scott Free or Big Barda to be people of color, black indigenous people of color. It wouldn't bother me if those characters were that, because we don't have enough of that in sci-fi with having more visible people of color in science fiction and very high concept stuff. Like we don't have that with people of color, right? And it will be good to have that if they just readapted Jack Kirby's Fourth World differently, And I already see, you know, from what I saw a glimpse of the Snyder cut, I was just like, oh, so we're gonna go with the classic New Gods, where I mean, I guess, I guess New Genesis is a whole bunch of white people living there. I mean, whatever, I don't know, but it adds more flavor to the material, and actually, like you know how many people now would be like so big fans of New Gods and Fourth World material if they saw themselves as those characters. Like if they saw like, oh shit, Orion, they made him black. They made Big Barda a black woman. They made Scott Free a black man. They made Light Ray a Latino or whatever. A Latino. They made him Asian. You know, people would gravitate to this thing more and be like, holy crap, this is amazing stuff that's happening here. You know, um, I'm not here to talk about casting of who I would cast as certain characters of the Fourth World stuff, but it's like, I mean, Darkseid's not hard, but dude is a freaking rock. If you're doing flashbacks of what Darkseid looked like before he became corrupted, then I would say you can do a black male actor playing a younger Darkseid with his brother Drax at the time. There's so much things you can do with the New Gods and New Genesis. It's just, you can go so many directions. Like to have like to imagine like New Genesis looking like Wakanda in space. That's not the right way to make the terminology, but yes, to make New Genesis look like this paradise of a world where you know you have this amazing paradisical world and like literal city that is floating in the sky, right? Like the city is like straight floating, and you have these normally plain, normally looking, you know, fauna and trees and just these beautiful places. It's like New Genesis is fascinating in many ways because you see a technologically advanced, beautiful city, and then and then floating, and then you have this paradise of green, lush, beautiful, alien looking flowers and fauna just everywhere. And in some comics, it's kind of wacky. They have like indigenous people in New Genesis, like living like paradisical lives it's really crazy. It's really, New Genesis is a very, very beautiful planet. So you can do something really incredible if you went the route of having more people of color in New Genesis, and then of course we all know Apocalypse. We all know Apocalypse is the hell world, jacked the fuck up, to the max. It's not hard to do. So in the context of that, this is the example I use with the New Gods is an example of this, where it really doesn't matter the ethnicity of the characters, because these are alien god beings from another dimension. So it doesn't make sense if you're going to just be like, oh, let's make them white people again. Like, we have the comics for that. We know who they are in the comics. But it wouldn't mind me if DC, if this sort of change, if people saw the New Gods in that way, it wouldn't surprise me if DC's like, yo, Let's put that in the comics too, because people seem to like that interpretation of the new gods, and you still keep the core of those characters, even though they're played by Black, Indigenous people of color in general. You know, you still have the epic storyline. You still have the scale, but we're part of it. People who look like us are a part of it. You know, and they would be the main characters. You know, they're not like secondary characters. They are the main coup de grace of the story, and it'd be awesome. You know, even Oprah low key looked like Granny Goodness in A Wrinkle of Time. So you know, it's great high concept stuff, and to me, it's annoying when we have these conversations, and then people talk about, because I remember the whole Heimdall thing and everything. It's just like, guys, Jesus, we know. I already know it's because of racism. We all know that's what it is. Um, but it was ridiculous to me seeing that with Anna Dvorak when she was made director, and people were just going after her because she did a lot of these movies, and people looked at it, they're just like, oh, she's gonna have some politics, and she's gonna make people, she's gonna make them black people or whatever, and I'm like, are y'all dead ass saying this? And personally, I didn't care. People saying that, I'm like, good. Let's go there. Let us go there with the new God stuff. Let's fuck it. Let's just go there. You know? And a lot of people will get their interest piqued. They'll be like, "Oh shit. This is different." People would be like, "Yo, this is actually different." We actually have a movie where we got a black man literally in space with Orion traveling in his little, chair, and it's like, "Oh shit." Movie with context, and it's like, oh shit. So, because it's annoying, in every sci-fi medium, it's like we can have freaking blue looking people. You know what's worse? They would cast the black people to be the aliens. They just put makeup on. And I'm like, so it's like I can use the white people to be, I mean, whatever, but I've seen that happen before. So, you know, that's my overall thoughts on that whole thing in terms of representation. Because I just had this thought today, and I was just like, it's not a problem. I mean, and it sucks because now it's canceled. The New Gods project was canceled, and because Warner Brothers is, being a complete buffoon. I don't know why. I think they probably did it because of the Zack Snyder bullshit. I really do think it was maybe because of that. Because I'm thinking Warner Brothers is thinking about going back to the Snyderverse. I really think so. I know some people are saying like, no, that's not going to happen. Guys, I think it might. I know some people not like to hear it, but I think we might go there. We might get Zack Snyder doing Justice League 2. He might come back. So that could be one of the reasons why they got rid of they didn't do any of her and Tom King's film. And it sucks because there was so much potential there to cast so many different diverse people to play those characters, and it just would have been an incredible stuff. Um, but seeing the arguments when that news came out, and it was just really stupid. It was just like, what? How the hell? How you make Orion black? I'm like, the dude's like a fucking god being from another. Like, does he have to be a white guy to be that? I mean, it's so absurd. Anyhow, that's just my thought.